What's going on, guys? It's Danny from Fantasy Stock Exchange here, and today I'll be going through my Week 14 running back rankings in a tier list format. You guys would have seen the last few weeks. We have shifted gears towards that tier list format, talking about the elite running backs on any given week, RB1s, RB2s, high-end RB3s, and some last-ditch flexes for you. So today, going to be covering my top 30 running backs in that tier list format, going over the same stuff as usual, matchup information, usage, spreads, to help you make that best informed lineup decision for your week 14 matchups. Again, this is crunch time. This is the final week. You guys need to clinch your playoff spots. You guys need to clinch your bye weeks. And today, I'm here to help. So if you guys enjoyed this type of content, make sure you leave a like down below. Try to get this video to over 150 likes as always. And of course, if you're new to the channel, haven't already done so, make sure you hit that subscribe button on the road to 20,000 subscribers. I appreciate you guys for that continued support. But before we get into the video, as always, we're going to hit the damn intro. All right, before I get into my official tier list, we go through the Week 14 bye week teams. That's going to start off with the Washington Commanders being on bye week this week, New Orleans Saints, Indianapolis Colts, Green Bay Packers, Chicago Bears, Atlanta Falcons, all on bye this week. So if you have players on that team, you'll already know because you'll see it, obviously, if you go into your own app, but you'll know that those guys are on bye, so you have to make up for their absences this week and get the dub regardless. But now we head on to the matchup chart for Week 14, and as you guys can see, some of the more favorable matchups, obviously the far right being the weighted average composite of the three factors we have listed here. The easiest matchups would be Joe Mixon going up against the Cleveland Browns, Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard going up against the Houston Texans, Jeff Wilson / Raheem Mostert going up against the Los Angeles Chargers, and then what we already saw on Thursday Night Football with Cam Akers and Kyron Williams going up against the Las Vegas Raiders front. On the flip side, the toughest matchups of the week start off with Tampa Bay with Rachaad White / Leonard Fournette if he does play, which we will get into in a second, going up against the San Francisco 49ers. Josh Jacobs, who already played, went up against the Los Angeles Rams. Travis Etienne going up against the Tennessee Titans. And then finally, James Conner going up against that New England Patriots defensive front. But now we head on to the tier list. And I usually save this for the end, but I know a lot of people have some questions like, where's him? Where's him? Where's him? So instead of doing it at the end, I will actually start the video out with the will they play tier. Basically, the main question marks of the week. And starting it off, Ken Walker, running back of the Seattle Seahawks. Seahawks coach Pete Carroll said that Ken Walker and DJ Dallas are game time decisions for Week 14's game. If he does play, I do consider him in that running back 1-2 range given the type of injury he has experienced. Obviously, that ankle injury could inhibit him this week. Change of directions, elusive type of back. Ankle injury is not what we want to see for a guy like Ken Walker who wins the way he does. Michael Carter, running back of the New York Giants. He is expected to play in this game, but obviously still harnering that injury from the past couple of weeks. If he does play, he's in that high-end running back 3 range. Leonard Fournette did not practice Friday, appeared to be trending towards not playing, but Todd Bowles has told reporters that they're hopeful that the foot will feel better on Sunday. If he does play, he is an insta-lock running back 2, basically flopping spots. Rachaad White, as you'll soon see, is in that running back 2 range right now, but if Leonard Fournette were to suit up, he'd be a running back 2. Rachaad White would be in that high-end running back 3 range. Damon Harris, he missed practice Friday, trending towards a second straight week on the inactive list after hurting his thigh in that Week 12 loss to the Vikings. If he does play, I do view him as a last-ditch flex. However, Ramondre Stevenson has fully taken over this backfield. DJ Dallas, running back of the Seattle Seahawks. And echoing what I said with Kenneth Walker, game time decision for Week 14 against the Panthers. If he does play, I believe him to be a high-end running back 3, assuming that Ken Walker is out and he does play. J.K. Dobbins, running back of the Baltimore Ravens. He participated in Ravens practice on Thursday, but the Ravens haven't had an official update on Dobbins' status. But John Harbaugh did say he is in play to return for the Steelers. So if he does play, I'd put him in that high-end running back 3 range. I'm not tempering my expectations up to the RB2 status quite yet. But I do think it's in the range of outcomes following this week for J.K. Dobbins to go back into that running back 2 area. And then finally, Saquon Barkley, running back of the New York Giants, experiencing issues with his neck. He is listed as questionable in this game, but Giants beat continues to be fairly adamant that he will play on Sunday. And of course, if he does play, he is well within that running back 1 range of my rankings. But now we get on to the elite running backs of this week, the game-changing running backs, the players this week, the plays this week that can legitimately win you the week on their own. And And starting off with everybody's favorite running back against everybody's favorite matchup for said running back, we have Derrick Henry, running back of the Tennessee Titans. Titans are 2.5 implied home favorites versus the Jaguars this week. 41 set over under, with the over being hit at a 76% rate. And it's pretty ludicrous what Derrick Henry has done to this Jaguars front in his career. 117.5 yards from scrimmage per game and 1.4 touchdowns per game in the 11 matchups versus Jacksonville in his career. Since 2018, though, 132.4 rushing yards per game, 1.72 rushing touchdowns per game in those 7 games. The Jags' run D is better than it has been in recent years, but Henry's volume and success over them is very important in my opinion. Titans' pass game has stagnated. They will need to rely upon their Hall of Fame running back to have a chance. Again, Henry carves up the Jaguars. Very, very good script this week for Henry at home. I do think that this is the get-right game for Henry and this Titans offense, leading him to be my running back 1 overall on the week. Running back 2 is going to be Austin Eckler of the Los Angeles Chargers, who is a 3.5-point home underdog versus Miami this week. 53.5 set over-under, with the over being hit at a 67% rate. And it's pretty simple to see why Austin Eckler is in this elite range of running back. 8.67 targets per game this season and 12 touchdowns in the 12 games he has played this year, 22.36 PPR points per game. And the reason why I love Austin Eckler this week as my RB2 is that this game has a high over-under in this matchup, 53.5 set over-under, and the Chargers are implied for 25 points. Miami has been good against opposing running backs, but the reason why I love Eckler is that he presents each week winning level receiving ability. We know that the Chargers receiving options have been absolutely dealing with injuries across the whole season. Keenan Allen looks like he's finally healthy, but Mike Williams, while he's set to play in this game, is still recovering from that ankle injury. Austin Eckler is going to be an integral part of the Chargers game plan in the passing game. So as a result, he's going to be my running back 2 overall on the week. Running back 3, Christian McCaffrey of the San Francisco 49ers. 3.5-point home favorites versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Niners are 37 set over under, with the over being hit at a 56% rate. And following a week where he had his worst performance playing a full-time role for the 49ers, but he bounced back in a big way after he was given the keys to the workload following Elijah Mitchell's knee sprain. McCaffrey returned to that workhorse level he showed in week 8. The last time he had the backfield, sans Elijah Mitchell. Like week 8, McCaffrey dominated from a fantasy perspective, totaling 27 opportunities and 28.6 PPR points. CMC on workhorse volume in this offense is a flat-out elite league-winning level running back. And you guys can see in week 8, the last time he was without Mitchell, 81% of the snaps, 75% of the rushing attempts, and 69% of the routes. We saw that type of usage return. Not as many rushing attempts purely, but 77% of the routes and 82% of the snaps, combined with the valuable touches and long down and distance and 2-minute drill occasions. Like, if we're getting this type of usage from CMC, he is going to win you your league down the stretch. Running back 4 of my rankings this week, Ramondre Stevenson of the New England Patriots. New England Patriots are 1.5-point road favorites in this game versus the Cardinals. 43.5 set over under, with the under being hit at a 76% rate. And if you're a bit shocked by Stevenson's placement as an elite running back, don't be. 16.2 PPR points per game since his bye week, which is decent, if not spectacular, but 18.7 PPR points per game since week 3. And these workhorse usages show the level of upside Stevenson has on any given week. And what I mean by workhorse usages, 78% of the snaps, 82% of the snaps, 98% of the snaps in his last 3 weeks. Combining last week's snaps of 98, we have 77% of the rushing attempts, 85% of the routes, and a 21% target share in that stretch. He is the definition of getting valuable touches. And with Damian Harris, like I mentioned in the will he play section, being up in the air for this matchup, I do think we have another week of Ramondre basically getting every single goddamn snap of this New England Patriots offense. We know he's a talented player. We know he's elusive in the open field. We know that he's able to command targets, 6.3 targets per game since week 3, which if you pace it out across 17 weeks would be a 107 target total. Combining that with the fact that this is an extremely favorable matchup this week against a Cardinals defense that ranks in the bottom third of our matchup chart, you're set for Ramondre to help you clinch your playoff spot this week in fantasy football. Absolutely love Ramondre Stevenson. Clear workhorse running back, clear elite running back, in my opinion, when it comes to fantasy football. Running back 5 of the week is going to be Tony Pollard of my beloved Dallas Cowboys. As we know, Cowboys are 17-point home favorites versus the Houston Texans this week. 44 set over under, with the under being hit at a 96% rate. And I get it. Again, it's another spicy one, but I'm all in on Tony Pollard being an elite running back this week. The only real downside that Tony Pollard has is his workload compared to these other elite running backs. Although his numbers since week 7, when Dak Prescott returned to the lineup, has meant much more than his raw volume. 23 PPR points per game in that stretch, and now faces an overmatched Texans defense that is the second easiest matchup on the chart. In a game where Dallas is implied for over 30 points and are 17-point home favorites, again, I expect the backfield split. Where I do think that Ezekiel Elliott is going to get involved in this matchup, but Tony P will get the valuable touches in space and operate as the team's main playmaker on offense. Again, we'll get more on Zeke in a bit, but I really, really like the outlook of Tony Pollard entering this week for fantasy football. Number 6 is going to be Joe Mixon of the Cincinnati Bengals, who are 6-point home favorites versus their division rival Cleveland Browns. 46.5 over-under, with the under being hit at a 94% rate. And it's a bit sketch with Joe coming off of his concussion, but given this implied workload we expect for Joe Mixon, combined with the matchup at hand, it's impossible not to love Mixon this week. You can argue him higher than running back 6, but regardless, he has the easiest matchup on the entire matchup chart in a game, again, where they are 6-point home favorites against a divisional rival. Joe Mixon has garnered 22.3 opportunities per game when healthy this season. And against the biggest run sieve defense in the entire league, this is a recipe for a playoff clinching week. But now, off of the elite running backs, we head on to the running back 1 tier. And starting it off, kicking it off, is going to be DeAndre Swift of the Detroit Lions, who are 2-point home favorites versus Minnesota this week. 51.5 set over under, with the over being hit at a 70% rate. And he's the first surprise for many who have had him all season. But DeAndre Swift's season has finally returned given last week's usage uptick. 51% of the snaps, up from the low 30s he's seen in recent weeks, and saw a huge uptick in terms of his rushing share and route participation. Workload, check. Now in a game environment where the Lions are 2-point home favorites in a 51.5 set over-under matchup where the Lions are implied for 27 points, I absolutely love DeAndre Swift. All in on him being a league winner down the stretch this season, and if you traded for him at the deflated prices he was going for even just a few weeks ago, congrats on your potential league winner. I absolutely love DeAndre Swift here on out. I do think he could be a top 5 to 10 running back every single given week. RB9 on the week is going to be Dalvin Cook, the other side of this matchup. Obviously, as I mentioned, Vikings are 2-point road underdogs in this game versus Detroit. 51.5 set over under, with the over being hit at a 70% rate. And the pros of Dalvin Cook is that we know when healthy, he is a workhorse running back and has a great game environment against a top 10 rushing matchup. But the problem with Cook is that I think we need to temper our expectations from what he was back in 2019, 2020. The touch-for-touch efficiency has gone down a tremendous bit, and he hasn't had that same touchdown upside he once represented. Again, that's evidenced in the numbers. The last 2 years, 15.2 PPR points per game this season, which is the RB13 in points per game, as well as 15.9 PPR points per game in 2021. When comparing that to his totals in 2020, where he averaged 24.1 points per game, and 2019, where he averaged 20.9 points per game, you can see a clear downtick. Again, I still think he's a stud, RB1, 2 for the rest of the season, but I don't think you can consider him back in that elite tier. So for now, RB9, still really like his range of outcomes, but I do think we need to temper expectations on the level of player we have here with Dalvin Cook. RB10 on the week is going to be Travis Etienne of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Currently 2.5-point road underdogs this week against the Tennessee Titans. 41 set over under, but the over being hit at a 76% rate. And this is the third toughest matchup on paper, which prevents him from placing higher on my list, but has a legit workhorse role. 81% of the attempts, 61% route participation, all high leverage situations for the Jaguars this past week. Don't let the last 2 weeks of raw production affect your opinion on Travis Etienne. Obviously, he got hurt versus the Baltimore Ravens, and the Jaguars went down big extremely early versus the Lions this past week. While the matchup is tough, like I mentioned, Etienne has been extremely efficient this year and has gotten a monster workload, like I mentioned, since the trade of James Robinson. And when it comes to Etienne, in games where he has 70+% of the snaps, he has averaged about 17.8 PPR points per game. So definitely a difference maker, definitely a week-to-week running back 1. Absolutely love the outlook of Travis Etienne. And now finally, the final running back in the RB1 tier, we got Nick Chubb, running back of the Cleveland Browns, 6-point road underdogs versus Cincinnati this week. 46.5 set over under, with the under being hit at a 94% rate. And I'm a bit worried about potential game flow in this matchup for Chubb. Again, 6-point underdogs to their division rival, no receiving upside or Derrick Henry carry volume expected for this game. Again, I still think he's a top 12 guy due to his insane efficiency and touchdown scoring prowess he has shown this season. but I do think his volatility will always root in terms of game script. Overall, you know my thoughts on Chubb and any running back of this 2-down archetype. It really just depends on if Chubb can fall into the end zone against Cincinnati this week. But now we shift on to the running back 12 in my rankings this week with Miles Sanders of the Philadelphia Eagles. 7.5-point road favorites in this game. 45 set over under, with the under being hit at a 99% rate. And as I kind of said, he's a pretty similar archetype to that of Nick Chubb, only on a team with a mobile quarterback who rotates through 3 running backs rather than 2. Combining a lessened workload with worse talent, it's easy to see why Chubb ranks ahead of Sanders in the running back 1 area, whereas Sanders kicks off the running back 2s. But I actually do think that their range of outcomes are very similar. Philly, again, 7.5-point road favorite in this game versus Cleveland being a 6-point road underdog. The Giants represent a top 10 matchup based on the matchup chart, and given Philly's implied total, I'd virtually lock Sanders into a score this week. So again, usage keeps him out of the running back 1 range, but I do think he's a very safe running back 2, especially given the matchup, especially given the circumstances for Philadelphia going into New York this week. Running back 13 is going to be Rachaad White of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who are 3.5-point road underdogs against the Niners this week. 37 set over under, with the over being hit at a 56% rate. And this rank is completely contingent on Fournette missing this game, like I mentioned earlier. White has received 45 opportunities in the 2 games without Leonard Fournette this season. The volume and receiving upside would indicate a placement in running back 1 tier, but I do still have major question marks about the game environment. 3.5-point road dogs versus the toughest rush matchup in the entire NFL, where Tampa Bay is implied for around 17 points. Again, I still think the workload gives them a safe floor, but I am extremely worried about his ability to hit his ceiling this week, even with the backfield to himself in this scenario. So a little bit worried about Rachaad White, but given the workload, can't drop him out of the running back 2 range. Running back 14 this week is going to be Raheem Mostert of the Miami Dolphins. Miami is a 3.5-point road favorite in this game versus the Chargers. 53.5 set over under, with the over being hit at a 67% rate. And might be a shock to some, but Raheem Mostert regained a majority workload in this backfield over Jeff Wilson in terms of this past week's usage. 78% of the attempts and 49% of the routes were the highest totals Mostert has recorded since week 8. Combining that with the fact that this is the 3rd easiest matchup of the entire week for a running back on a team implied for 28 points, my only hesitance towards ranking him higher are the fact that I do expect them to get Jeff Wilson back involved, but there's a path to Mostert breaking the slate this week. You could argue, again, if he had that workload that he showed from last week, could be in the running back 1 range, but given the risk that Jeff Wilson gets more involved, I will keep him as my running back 14 inside the running back 2 range. Running back 15 of the week is going to be Ezekiel Elliott of the Dallas Cowboys. 17-point home favorites versus Houston. 44 set over under being hit 96% of the time. Echoing similar thoughts on the matchup that I did for Tony Pollard. 17-point home favorites, over 30 points implied total, with the 2nd easiest matchup of the entire slate. Like, yes, I absolutely am all in on Ezekiel Elliott being a very, very good running back play this week. Again, I get it. His workload is set to be less valuable than Tony Pollard's is overall in terms of receiving and 2-minute drill work. But we do know that when Dallas gets down to that green zone, that red zone, that got to convert type of area, they will feed number 21. Again, last 3 weeks, 17.7, 16.5, and 18.1 PPR points since returning from injury. He's operating now on the highest scoring offense in the NFL since Dak's week 7 return. So yes, I do love the outlook of both Tony Pollard, top 5 level running back, and Ezekiel Elliott, top 15 level running back in my rankings this week. RB16 is going to be James Conner of the Arizona Cardinals. 1.5-point home underdogs in this game against the New England Patriots. 43.5 set over under, with the under being hit at a 76% rate. He has been a complete workhorse this season when healthy. Again, 19.3 opportunities per game overall in games of over 50% of the snaps, as well as 23.7 opportunities per game in his last 3 weeks. I get it. The matchup is tough. Bottom 5 in the entire chart, but I do think that the volume alone makes him an every week running back too. He's not the most fun play, but he's a relatively safe bet any given week, given the level of workload he has commanded in recent weeks. Now, off of Connor, my running back 17 of the week is going to be Zonovan Knight of the New York Jets, who are 10-point road underdogs against the Buffalo Bills this week. 43 set over under, with the under being hit at a 91% rate. Michael Carter mentioned in the will he play section is a factor, but I do think that even if he plays, Zonovan Knight will operate as the team's number 1 option at running back this week. 37 opportunities in his last 2 games when it comes to Bam, and he has looked really good in his opportunity spot. The matchup is tough. I get it. 10-point road underdog to Buffalo. Given his level of play and receiving volume in the last 2 weeks, despite being an undrafted free agent, that indicates to me that he could potentially be matchup proof in another week if he is given that full clear running back one opportunity share, which I do think will be the case this week versus Buffalo. Running back 18 this week is going to be Latavius Murray of the Denver Broncos. 9.5-point home underdogs for the Broncos this week versus the Kansas City Chiefs. 44 set over under, with the under being hit at a 90% rate. And since Melvin Gordon's release, Latavius Murray has quietly gotten legit running back 2 usage, turning in over 65% of the rushes and 50% of the routes in each of his last 2 games. He is the clear number 1 back of the team in terms of snaps and overall usage. That's the pro when it comes to Latavius Murray. But the problem that we kind of know is that the Broncos are 9.5-point home underdogs, implied for 17 points on an offense that hasn't been able to get into rhythm all year. I think the volume alone should keep him into this running back 2-level mix, but I'm not a fan of the ceiling of Latavius Murray this week. Running back 19 this week for me in the final of the running back 2 tier is going to be Deontay Foreman, running back of the Carolina Panthers, who are 3.5-point road underdogs versus Seattle this week. 44.5 set over under, with the over being hit at a 95% rate. He's looked good this season since the team's trade of Christian McCaffrey, but his workload has gone down steadily since those first couple of weeks. Peaked back this week at 52% of the snaps and 40% of the routes, which is, fine, but presents volatility in his workload any given week. However, top 8 matchup this week against the Seattle D, combined with a weakened running back landscape this week given bye weeks, and you have the final running back 2 projection of the week with Deontay Foreman of the Carolina Panthers. But now we head on to the high-end running back 3s of this week, which I'm going to try to go as rapid fire as possible as this video is getting a little bit long. Jamal Williams of the Detroit Lions mentioned the matchup with DeAndre Swift, but they are 2-point home favorites versus Minnesota. 51.5 set over being hit at a 70% rate. And Jamal Williams took a big hit to his workload this past week, falling from that 40 to 50% snap share and 45+% rush share in recent weeks to a 30% snap share and a 35% rush share this week. Swift really just took back his running back 1 job from Williams, but I still like him this week given the game environment and the role he still represents. Think of this situation with Williams and Swift as a worse version of that with Tony Pollard and Ezekiel Elliott. Obviously, with Tony Pollard and Swift representing that, efficient in space level running back for their respective teams, and Zeke and Jamal being those tone setting, short yardage type of situational backs. Running back 21 this week, Najee Harris of the Pittsburgh Steelers, 2-point home favorites against Baltimore when it comes to the Pittsburgh Steelers this week. 36.5 set over being hit at a 51% rate. And his recent rushing uptick has been great to see, but it being combated with a decrease in receiving usage is not what we wanted to see for Najee Harris on this bad offense. His floor is impacted without the receiving work, and given the fact that the Steelers are only implied for 19 points this week, I am a bit concerned. I do think he needs to score to hit his ceiling this week, which, given the landscape, given the matchup, I don't really see a ton of scoring being happened in this game. Running back 22 this week is going to be James Cook of the Buffalo Bills. Buffalo 10-point home favorites versus the New York Jets this week. 43 set over being hit at a 91% rate. Another one you can argue for being higher given last week's involvement. James Cook looked great against the Pats en route to 20 opportunities and 16.5 PPR points. The receiving usage, the explosive ability, all we wanted to see for this rookie second-round pick. But I still do have concerns about this backfield having a near exact split between him and Singletary. But on a team this week that are 10-point home favorites, I do expect both to be extremely viable. Running back 23 is going to be Dameon Pierce of the Houston Texans. 17-point road underdogs in this game. 44 set over with the under being hit at a 96% rate. Usage is good overall, but the lack of receiving work on a team implied for 13.5 points this week doesn't bode well for his outlook. He's a very good player, as we know, but this game environment leaves him as an extremely risky play for fantasy football. As we know, the offense is a mess. The Cowboys will absolutely boat race the Texans this week, and Pierce's efficiency has gone down in recent weeks, given how much defenses have zoned in on him, given the current supporting cast in Houston. So I do think from the Cowboys' perspective, you're not worried about their passing game. You're not worried about their offensive line. The only player you're worried about for Houston is going to be Dameon Pierce. And again, given this game environment, it'll be tough for him to pay off given expectation. Running back 24 this week is going to be Isaiah Pacheco of the Kansas City Chiefs. 9.5-point road favorites in this game versus Denver. 44 set over being hit 90% rate. The between the tackles lead back of the KC high-powered offense. Pacheco is a threat to score any given week, given how strong this offense is. But the problem with Isaiah Pacheco is that he is extremely touchdown or bust, given the zero he gives you in receiving work. You can argue for him to be higher given the game environment as a 10-point home favorite, but the Broncos are a bottom 7 matchup for opposing running backs, and Pacheco, as mentioned, basically needs a touchdown versus a great defense to pay off. So I am a bit worried at him meeting expectation and getting into that running back 2 tier, which leaves him in this high end running back 3 range for me. And finally, running back 26, the last high-end running back 3 for me this week is going to be James Cook's counterpart in the Buffalo Bills backfield with Devin Singletary. As I mentioned with Cook, Buffalo 10-point home favorites in this game, 43 set over being hit at a 91% rate. And I'm still optimistic that he could chip into Cook's edge from last game. But again, it is still a projection. He's been good this year, so I'll give him the benefit of the doubt for this week. But if we continue seeing James Cook command this backfield, I will have no problem lowering him into that last-ditch flex range. And speaking of that range, completely rapid fire. Let's get these over with. Running back 27, Jeff Wilson. Again, Miami Dolphins, 3.5-point road favorites in this game versus the Chargers. 53.5 set over being hit, 67% rate. Basically echoing exactly what I said with Raheem Mostert. Raheem did take the advantage in usage this week, but I do think that Jeff Wilson could still be involved, can still be, a clear 1B running back for this Miami Dolphins team. But we are yet to see exactly what this split's going to be. Gus Edwards, running back of the Baltimore Ravens, 2-point road underdogs versus Pittsburgh this week. 36.5 set over being hit at a 51% rate. Gus Edwards, I like him, but he's a 2-round running back on a team implied for 17 points in a matchup in a low-scoring game environment. I'm just not going to trust him in my lineups this week, unfortunately, when it comes to Gus Edwards. Running back 29, Kareem Hunt of the Cleveland Browns, 6-point road underdogs versus Cincinnati this week, 46.5 set under 94% of the time. And I mentioned the game environment when it came to Nick Chubb. Apply that for Kareem Hunt, only with the fact that Kareem Hunt gets about a fifth of the work that Nick Chubb does on any single given week. So I like Kareem Hunt. The implied value is obviously great if anything were to happen to Nick Chubb, but I do think the standalone value has taken a big hit this season. Number 30 this week is going to be Jerick McKinnon of the Kansas City Chiefs. 9.5-point road favorites in this game. 44 set over 90% of the time. And Jerick McKinnon, as we know, is this team's pass down back, but I don't think it receives enough early down work to be considered in the top 25 area. And then finally, running back 31 of my rankings this week, closing this video off, is going to be Samaje Perine of the Cincinnati Bengals. 6-point home favorites versus Cleveland. 46.5 set over being hit 94% of the time. I mentioned this is by far the easiest matchup for opposing running backs with the Cleveland Browns defense. Samaje Perine should be working behind Joe Mixon, but if anything were to happen in terms of Joe Mixon's workload, maybe, Zach Taylor wants to ease him back into the lineup this week after last week's miss. I do think Samaje Perine has a path to return in a big way on this running back 31 ranking. But either way, appreciate you guys for making it to the end of this video. Of course, if you enjoyed, make sure you leave a like down below. Again, 150 likes is the goal of this video. And of course, subscribe to the channel. On the road, 20,000 subscribers. Appreciate you guys for that continued support. Good luck in your matchups. Hopefully your running back plays pay dividends to your fantasy team advancing to the playoffs this week. Until then, good luck. Take care.
Wire me the money.